despite the fact that it has done permanent damage to my left wrist, I still use Emacs for a lot of things because my hands have learned the commands. It's a legacy Unix editor. It's a good programming tool. Its user interface was, one would think it was almost designed to be bad, right? So one of the things it does for me, and one of the reasons I use it, is that if I def an example function, some argument, it's doing the syntax highlighting. Right? It is coloring keywords, functions. You'll see that it colors variables and so forth. That's giving me hints about the structure of my code. Now, color is not the best way to do that, but it's a way that pretty much any kind of terminal display will support. So it's what is most commonly used. You will also see some editors will put it into boldface, italicize things, and so forth. There are better ways to do it, but they require more sophisticated environments. This just works. The other thing is that when I hit carriage return, if I hit a tab and type return 15, notice that when I hit return, the carriage return there, it automatically outdented. It knows that's the end of the function. If I do something like count equals 3 while count greater than 0, print count plus equals 1, it is not inserting tab characters there. It is inserting 4 spaces. It's always indenting with spaces rather than tabs because different editors will decide that a tab is equivalent to 4 spaces or 8 or 6, or people might have their own settings changed in the editor. You have no idea what the visual appearance of a tab character in a file is going to be. So, everybody indents their code with space characters because that's the same everywhere. And when Python says, what's the indentation, it does not try to guess what your editor thinks a tab is equivalent to. It just counts white space characters. It counts the number of space and tab characters and says, space, space, tab, space. That's 4 characters of indent, even if today your editor is displaying it as equivalent to 9 or something foolish. Okay? So you'll want to find an editor that does this. The good news is, almost every editor that you would use for programming, i.e. anything other than Microsoft Word or a PDF creator or OpenOffice or something like that, has a module of some sort that says, I understand Python syntax, I can do this for you. What editor do you normally use? TextMate. Okay, there's a Python bundle for TextMate. You just say, as soon as it sees that the file name ends in .py, it says, right, I'm supposed to use the coloring and indentation rules for Python. Just as if you loaded a .html file, it would say, right, .html tells me you want me to do it this way. What editor do you use?
Emacs.
Okay, Emacs. Here we are. Okay, lots and lots of tools on lots of platforms have this. It's sometimes called a mode. Look for Python mode or Python bundle for your editor. TextMate Python bundle, it's the first link that comes up. Okay. Now, why do I hate Emacs even though I keep using it? Emacs, a lot of the control characters are control plus something or escape plus something. So you're constantly doing reaches with the small finger of your left hand for control and escape. That's the worst possible motion to repeat, and it's most people's weak hand. And if you're close enough, you can actually hear my wrist click when I do that now. Right? Because I've been doing this for 20 odd years. Richard Stallman, who invented or wrote the version of Emacs that most people use, he didn't invent it, is no longer able to open doors. He cannot actually close. Sure, it's funny, except you think about that. The damage to his wrists has been so bad that he can't actually close his fingers. And even when he does, there's very little strength left. So when you're choosing an editor, treat it the same way that pianists treat piano keyboards. Worry about your hands and your wrists. This is an ergonomics issue. There's lots of stuff out there to help you guide. Right? But you're going to be doing a lot of typing. You're going to be typing up theses and papers and software, hopefully. Okay? If your hands start to hurt, you're doing it wrong. So fix that, please. I wish somebody had insisted 20 years ago that I use a proper wrist rest and that I find an editor that didn't exacerbate a pre-existing condition. So please don't do this to yourself. Now, one step up from things like Emacs, if I can find it, are integrated development environments. This one is called Wing 101. Wingware makes a professional power tool for Python, an integrated development environment. The free version for students is called Wing 101 because most entry-level courses, Psych 101 is the generic intro course in first-year university of psychology. You'll hear a lot of Americans refer to blah, blah 101. Okay? I like this. It runs on all three platforms and it's free. And it'll get you through pretty much everything you're going to do in the next 12 months with Python. Unless you completely chuck in your degree and do nothing but programming, go and build some websites, clone Twitter, and retire as a millionaire. Buy that island in the channel you've had your eye on. If you do that, I'm happy to take donations for the Software Carpentry project. They are tax deductible. Okay? So, this pulls together in one tool all of the things you need to do when you're programming. This is an editor that is, yes, syntax aware. If I say def example of argument, I hit carriage return. I didn't even have to hit tab to indent. It knows I must be in the body of a function. Result equals 1 over 3. Return result. And when I hit carriage return, it outdents, etc., etc. There's a lot of other tools that we'll be exploring a little bit later. There are tools, for example, to help me find where a function is defined. I can just click on the name of a function where it's being called and say, jump me to the definition. I don't have to remember that this function is in that library and in that file. Python knows that. It must know that if it can call the function. Right? So a good editing tool will allow you to say, where is this? Really good ones, like Eclipse, allow you to work forward as well. You could click on this and say, show me all the places where this function is being called. So that if I change this, who's going to be affected? Now, clearly, if this is on your desktop, it can't look through code in Surrey. Right? But it can certainly look through everything you've got to show you, right, if you change this, here are the 4 places that are going to be affected. Are you sure you know what you want to do? There's a lot of other tools built in here for debugging as well. And we will take a look at those. Okay. If you want to use this, it will, after you master it, make you a better programmer. It will do a lot of things for you and allow you to concentrate on your problem rather than the mechanics of keystrokes. But there's a learning overhead. And again, we're talking about engineering trade-offs. Emacs is a general-purpose editor. It only takes me so far for HTML or text documents or Python or anything else, but it works the same way for all of them. So once my hands know one set of keystrokes, I can edit pretty much anything without a lot of grief. But it only takes me so far. An IDE, like this, or like the MATLAB environment, for those of you playing with MATLAB, okay, it takes me a long way, but it doesn't transfer to other languages. If you know the MATLAB IDE and can type the commands and find variable definitions and use the graphics and debug code and save definitions and all of those things, that's great, but it doesn't help you when you're writing your thesis in LaTeX, right, or Microsoft Word. Now, some people have tried, projects like Eclipse, for example, to get you both worlds. To give you something that goes all the way for every language, but works the same for all of them. Yeah, my brother used to carry, as a joke, a Swiss Army knife with 98 attachments. Right? It was the size, there's nothing in this room that big, actually. I mean, it's a Swiss Army knife, and it's not much smaller than this, and it's a lot heavier. Now, he's an industrial designer, and he said, okay, somebody forgot the purpose of a Swiss Army knife. A Swiss Army knife is supposed to do a couple of things, and you've always got it, and you just, it's always there to do basic jobs. Right? Trying to combine that with does everything fails. Right? I know of no examples of tools that manage to max out on both of those axes of broadly applicable and power tool for a particular purpose. I can't think of it. Do any of you mess around with Photoshop? Yeah, I see a few heads. Okay, Photoshop takes a long time to learn. I mean, basic things you can do. If you really want to use, filters and layers and everything else, you can spend weeks or months mastering Photoshop. Okay? And it doesn't help you when it's time to draw a graph because it doesn't do graphs. Okay? I don't know what the equivalent is for audio editing. I don't know what the tool is that everybody here kind of knows how to drive because it's a good general purpose. Audacity, maybe? I see a few heads nod. People here? Yeah, okay. So it's not a power tool. You would not, edit the next Nine Inch Nails album using Audacity, except as some sort of postmodern ironic joke. right? But if you've got an MP3 file and you just need to up the volume and do a little bit of noise control, and you're done, right? Slightly more sophisticated than Swiss Army knife. So it's up to you to decide, do you want to invest the time in a tool like this, which will pay off, but there's the startup cost? Or are you expecting that you're going to do maybe a bit less programming? So pick whatever editor you're used to using anyway, as long as it's one that can at least do this much. And figure out how to use the Python-specific commands in that editor that you're already using for data files and everything else. Okay? Programmers tend to be passionately attached to their editors. They will change nationality, they will change operating system. In at least one case, they will change gender before they will change editor, right? Because you've invested a lot of time in learning. What do I? My hands do this, right? And magic happens on the screen. If you're a touch typist, how many people here touch type? No? Okay. You've invested a lot of time in learning that and getting that down to body memory so that you can concentrate on what you're trying to create. Right? Make a